Thursday, October 13th, 2022. I am Aaron Schatz, editor-in-chief of FootballOutsiders.com, joined as always by Mike Tanier, and we are going to preview the games of Week 6 in the NFL. But before we do, I want to tell you about our sponsor, which is Underdog Fantasy. Come play Underdog Fantasy with us and double your first deposit up to $100 with the promo code OUTSIDERS. Get in soon for NBA Best Ball because the NBA season is almost here, or use their other user-friendly game formats like Battle Royale, a 6-round best ball style draft with simpler chances to win than traditional daily fantasy sports sites, or try their pick'em games where you can wager on players' chances to go higher or lower than projected stat lines, even in states where traditional prop betting is not currently available. Underdog is the fastest growing fantasy site around. Join the fun at underdogfantasy.com or download Underdog at your favorite app store. Use the promo code OUTSIDERS now. OUTSIDERS, that's your promo code that doubles your first deposit up to $100. Yes. We were supposed to have a guest today, and I don't know what happened. So if you were tuning in to see Seth Keysor of the Athletic Kansas City talk about the Chiefs and the Bills with us, I apologize. He does not seem to be here. And
he got knocked over by Devontae. And they're getting him checked out. But we think he's going to be okay.
Maybe pressing charges.
He may be pressing charges. Who knows?
So we'll see if he appears. Do you mind? Do you want to still do Buffalo, Kansas City first, or should we switch and do the 1:00 games first?
Let's switch it up. Let's do the 1:00 games first. If we get them,
all right.
Yeah.
Let's start with 1:00 games before we get to the big 4 and 8. The biggest games of the week are definitely at 4 and 8, but there's some good ones at 1. And let's start with the shockingly good Jacksonville at Indianapolis game. Shockingly important.
Yes.
Believe it or not, this is the biggest game for playoff odds leverage being played on Sunday.
Oh, my God.
The biggest game for playoff odds leverage is Monday, but this is the second biggest of the week, and that's because somebody from the AFC South has to make the playoff. So Indianapolis is in 37% of our simulations if they win this game and 14% if they lose. Jacksonville is in 61% of the time if they win this game, 34% if they lose. So I went back and I said, what happens to DVOA if we removed the week 2 huge Jaguars 24-0 shutout of the Colts?
Okay.
How bad would the Colts still be? Oh! I paused. I'm putting a pause on my discussion of the Colts. Our guest is here.
You saved us from talking about the Colts. Thank you.
Well, someone needed to.
I'm putting a pin. We're putting a pin in Jacksonville and Indianapolis. Surprisingly important game for Seth Keysor. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Of the Athletic Kansas City, who you can find on Twitter at RealMNChiefsFan. Not a Kansas City Chiefs fan. He's in Minnesota, folks.
Yeah, they wouldn't let me stay around. No, I lived in Kansas City for a few years during the Montana era. Got addicted to the Chiefs, and then moved back up to the North Dakota, Minnesota area, and so that's how all that got started. And then it just became a bit that I just decided to run with.
Better to be addicted to the Chiefs than the Vikings.
Absolutely, that's what my dad said when he let me become a Chiefs fan while we lived down there. I was becoming a Chiefs fan, and he basically was like, "Yeah, I'm going to let this happen."
Yeah, there's a lot more happiness in being a Chiefs fan.
There is.
Especially in recent years than being a Vikings fan.
Absolutely. The two were very synonymous for a long time. Things have changed lately.
So this is the biggest game of the week. So we'll skip our 1:00 for now. Let's go to Buffalo at Kansas City. This is the biggest game, of course, for Super Bowl odds. And of course, Seth may not agree with it, but our numbers do have Buffalo ahead of Kansas City, both for this year and in our preseason projections.
Sure.
So we have their odds of making the Super Bowl a lot higher. But Buffalo's odds of making the Super Bowl go from 46% if they win to 34% if they lose, while Kansas City's odds of making the Super Bowl go to 20% if they win this game, but drop to 11% if they lose.
Interesting. And I mean, I wouldn't know. I specifically chose the career I chose because I don't necessarily understand numbers. They frighten me. But it's interesting to me, the idea there, because the percentages are a little bit higher in terms of the potential change for the Bills, from what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
That part doesn't surprise me. I think with the Chiefs, they're so tough to quantify because one week they are just dismantling the Buccaneers, and the next week they are just, or even in one game, they go down 17-0 to the Raiders. Like, oh crap, we got to win this game, and then they ridiculously, and then they come back and win it all. I just can't tell who they are.
They also frustrate our numbers because historically we've found that teams late in games that allow points and shut down their offense with a big lead, that does seem to have some predictive value. But with the Chiefs, it doesn't seem to have any. Like, they are like specialists in frustrating my numbers by shutting things down with a lead late in game. The Tampa Bay game being a good example, where they let Tampa Bay score a bunch of points in the fourth quarter.
Right. And yeah, they're a tough team. I can really understand how tough they must be to predict in terms of the results of certain plays, because Andy's notorious for shutting things down a little bit once a game is out of reach. He's very protective of his plays. Like, you watch them, if you watch the final quarter, even before they pulled people and that kind of stuff, they weren't running anything that they had not shown before. They didn't dress it up differently. It's like, you could find this play in week 2. And that's so rare for Andy. And that's such a big part of how they have success, is how they dress things up differently. But they're just weird. They're a weird team this year. We kind of knew what would happen coming into the season as their new guys adjust to the offense. And I think it was hard to know how much of an impact it would have. And it really feels like it's snap by snap, even when you see, oh man, Mahomes and MVS are just a little off on their timing. Mm-hmm. And then the next play, they might be perfectly in sync in a way that he really wasn't, even with some of his guys last year, because MVS is a better receiver than Demarcus Robinson.
Although I think the Chiefs' plays get guys open more than, for example, the Packers.
Sure.
The Packers seem to be more like Aaron Rodgers better be in sync with his receivers.
Right.
Whereas I think the Chiefs are more like, all right, we'll get the guys open and Mahomes will find. There seems to be less. They seem to be adapting quicker.
Yes, they definitely. I mean, Reed has always schemed guys open. That's why you get, like, your Byron Pringle and Demarcus Robinsons, who aren't, terrible players. I'm not trying to besmirch anyone, but they'll end up with 400 or 500 yards, and on most of those, you're going to get some schemed open stuff going on. And that's where guys like MVS and Juju Smith-Schuster, the idea is, okay, if they're a little bit better than those guys, they can get schemed open. That works just as well. And then they also can do a little bit plus. One thing I have seen differently with them is you're seeing a little more in terms of leverage throws, in terms of, the receivers sort of open, but he's got the inside leverage, that sort of stuff. Those weren't looks that he really gave very often to Pringle or to Robinson, and still doesn't to Hardman for pretty obvious reasons. He's a small guy. He would with Hill, with varying results, because Hill's such a tough receiver, but he's so small. You're seeing a little more of that every week. And I'm curious if they try to wrinkle that in more and more.
I do notice that, especially, like, I remember Pringle. His catch was always over the middle, sort of like right over Mahomes' face, 8 yards down the field with a big hole in the zone, because Kelsey cleared it out. Yep. And Hill cleared out the safety. So that's there for him. Whereas, both Juju and MVS, they can be covered tightly. Now they're not always catching the ball. But no, especially not MVS. Like, one bounce right off his chest again this week, but they're still getting those opportunities in those situations.
Right. And it's important for them to keep doing it. And that was the funny thing, MVS had easily his best game as a Chief. And of course he punctuated it with that drop, because you were just about to say, because he had a big deep ball the previous week against the Bucs, and him even getting a few of those, it doesn't even need to be every week, just every other week. What that does to teams schematically, or having him hitting Hardman on a couple of deep crossers, what that does to teams schematically, it forces them to continue to, nope, still got to back off, still got to back off. They'll still hit you over the top. And that's important. But yeah, those drops, because Juju's had his fair share of those too.
Yes.
And that's supposed to be his thing, is he's a guy with great hands, tough player. He's been tough after the catch, but he's had a few contested drops that they need him to collect.
Right.
I want to talk a little bit about Travis Kelce, who, of course, had an awesome game, especially for fantasy purposes. I say that as a Travis Kelce fantasy owner. Buffalo is number 1 against tight ends so far this year. Now, I went back and looked, and the only really good tight end they've played is Mark Andrews. And I'm not sure what I learned, because I actually went back and watched Baltimore against Buffalo. And of course, Buffalo is playing nothing but zone coverage because it's Lamar Jackson. So nobody shut down Mark Andrews, like in particular. Like
No.
It was a lot of like cornerbacks on him because he'd be split out wide and they'd be in a zone. So the cornerback would be on him. And it wasn't like, it's not like it's the safety and the safety Jordan Poyer and the linebacker Matt Milano are shutting down the tight end. So I don't know whether we learn anything about that for this game. I was hoping I was going to learn, oh my God, Jordan Poyer shut down Mark Andrews.
Right.
What's he going to do against Kelce? But I didn't learn that at all.
Well, yeah, because you'd think maybe watching it is okay. Is it like the Chargers with Derwin James thing? Because one of the reasons the Chargers have had some success against the Chiefs is Derwin James can cover Kelce. One of the only players I can see do it. So they don't even fool around with zone with Kelce a lot of the time. They either have someone hitting him and then someone in tight man like a corner, or they say, Derwin, you can cover this guy. No one else can, but you can do it. I think you make a really solid point there in terms of the Bills playing a ton of zone defense against Andrews as well as obviously Lamar Jackson. That just doesn't tell you anything about what will happen against Kelce, because generally speaking, and Aikman actually touched on this, it was nice hearing someone say it during the broadcast against the Raiders. It's like, playing man coverage on Kelce isn't ideal, but zone coverage is a death sentence. Because he won't even run his route. He'll just run to where there's no one there, and him and Mahomes have such a good connection that they both know, oh, there's going to be a gap there, so I don't care what we call, just go to that spot and turn around.
And Mahomes can move around, but there isn't the fear of, don't put your guys in man and let them turn their backs on Mahomes in the same way there is with Lamar Jackson. So I don't think that there's the
Yep. Yeah. It's definitely a very, very different thing. Mahomes is a very, very, very good scrambler, maybe even a great one. But the gap between a great scrambler even and Lamar Jackson is like, it's a chasm. And so I assume they'll play him differently. And especially if White plays, the Bills have the horses to try to man up across the board.
I don't think he's back yet.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Everything I heard, I'm going to triple check right now. Everything I heard out of Buffalo was
because I think we would have heard a lot about it if this was going to be the week he came back. Because it would be like, here's the Tre'Davious White is coming back now. It's perfect timing. So he's not ready to come back at this point.
Yeah, I know he was designated to return, but obviously they haven't actually designated him yet. And then just on the flip side, before we even talk about it, and someone just mentioned it, Trent McDuffie.
Yeah,
he might be back for the Chiefs. That's something to really keep an eye on.
Who does he replace? Right now, the top 3 cornerbacks are Snead, Fenton, and the rookie Jalen Watson.
Right.
Who becomes the 4th cornerback when McDuffie comes back? Is it Watson?
In previous years, I would have said Watson, absolutely no hesitation. But Rashad Fenton has not been as good this year as he's been in previous years. And some of that is, I think he's been asked to play a little more just pure man coverage along the outside. And that's not his game. Fenton's a good zone corner, but he doesn't have tremendously quick feet or acceleration. And so, I mean, he's been put in a bad spot a few times that just don't suit him. Whereas Jalen Watson, he's not particularly quick either, but he's so much bigger, so much more physical, that him being a little grabby, it changes things a lot more. And I think he's played better than Fenton so far this year. Spags does not like playing rookies, but like this year, he's got rookies all over the place. Yeah. So I don't know what to think. Fenton does I like the way Bill Houston phrased it here. Fenton does have value, especially in zone looks, but he has been at a notch below where he's been at previous. He's been a competent corner previous years, not a star. If I were him, and I mean, you'd have a 3rd year and 2 rookies, but I would have it be McDuffie, Snead, Watson.
I was going to say, I actually looked up numbers because I was curious where the weaknesses were in the Kansas City defense. And according to our friends at Sports Info Solutions, Fenton has given up 12.6 yards per target so far this year. It's early. It's early.
That's a big number.
He's got to be. Was he the one when Adams caught the 4th and 1 like that? Because like 1 or 2 plays like that could be it. I don't recall who that was, but
it was him over the top on that 4th and 1. Yeah, which
Okay.
to be fair, I want to say it was Reed bit really hard on play action. It was a great play call because it was 4th and 1. And so he didn't have help. I think he thought he'd have help, but he got roasted too. I mean, that was bad. And then his pass interference down the right side was a result of getting roasted. Watson, just because it's back-to-back plays, a couple plays later, his pass interference on the left side against Adams, that was a lot better coverage and a lot more of a 50-50 call than the one against Fenton, which would get called every time.
One thing you have to look out for in this game, I don't think the Chiefs are explosive as they were with Tyreek. I don't think that's and if you look at 40-yard plus pass plays, I believe the Chiefs only have 2 40-plus yard pass plays this season.
Yeah.
The Bills have 6.
Yeah.
The Buffalo Bills have 6. So you don't want to get into that sort of foot race situation against this team. And by the way, it is 2 40-yard plus plays. So having all your horses back in cornerback should help for the Chiefs.
Definitely. Those big broken plays to Gabe Davis. I mean, that's how they gave up 3 of their touchdowns in that divisional round game. And Allen played out of his mind, make no mistake. But Davis was just open. You just had safeties that were gone, or a cornerback that had fallen down, or a cornerback that had run into another cornerback. That one was particularly hilarious.
Well, it's not like Davis had a big game last week. We have to worry about him at all.
Yeah. Thank goodness.
Nothing to worry about. Not like a 98-yard touchdown.
It's sort of it's funny, but I mean, I think the defenses are being a little underplayed here. I know the offenses are so good and these teams are top 2 in scoring, but the Chiefs defense has been average this year, and the Bills defense is number 2 in our numbers. So, I mean, I actually our over/under formula likes the under in this game. Like, even though it seems like, these teams are going to. Well, I mean, the number is huge. It's 54. That's like really high.
That's a big number.
Yeah.
I think there's a good point in that. So much of it depends not just on the defense overall against the offense, but it's going to be specific matchups. When the Chiefs' offensive line has struggled in pass protection, and they have a few times this year, they haven't always seemed to have an answer for it, because I think they came into this whole year and formulated their entire offense around our O-line is going to be a strength. And so it's taken them some time, albeit it happened faster against the Raiders than it did against the Colts, to adjust when, wow, we're getting whooped up front and we need to adjust our game plan. Now, again, they adjusted faster against the Raiders, and I assume they're going to go into the Bills game thinking Orlando Brown probably can't block Von Miller.
Yeah, the Bills not only have good pass rushers, they have a deep pass rush, so they can rotate guys, keep rotating guys in.
Yep. And, Brown Miller in particular is a tough matchup for the Chiefs, because Miller, he matches up better against their other guys that are a little more power, a little more combo, might try to beat you going through you or inside. That Brown he's just a man mountain. But he has gotten destroyed by some speed rushes this year, even more so than last year. He hasn't played as well as he did last year. And that'll be a really determining factor. And then how the Chiefs adjust to that. And then the same, in terms of pressure on the other side, Spagnuolo has had mixed results against Josh Allen. Last year, again, the divisional round game, he made some huge throws, but he also had multiple plays where the blitz surprised him, where he had to throw it away, or he got rushed out of the pocket. And then he would make some incredible play with his legs, because Josh Allen's unbelievable. But that's going to be a big one too, because the first few times Spags and Allen matched up, Spags by far got the better end of it. And last year it was much more give and take, with mostly Josh Allen taking. And so that's going to be a big aspect of it too. Willie Gay Jr. being out for the Chiefs is a big deal, especially in the middle of the field.
Yep, I was going to ask about that, and Bill Houston mentions it. Harris is the name of the linebacker who's replacing him, I guess, in the lineup, and it's much more of a run stuffer. In the Bills, the Bills' running game has been really bad this year. Kansas City has actually been above average against the run this year, which is rare, and the Bills are 30th in run DVOA.
I can't picture the Bills formulating much of a game plan around the run game.
No, I don't think they're going to.
Yeah.
If they're going to use Singletary, it's going to be as a pass catcher because the way the Chiefs play defense kind of opens things up for a lot of dump offs to running backs.
Yep, especially with Gay not being in there because of his sideline to sideline speed. He's able to arrive. Austin Eckler had some big plays against the Chiefs, but a couple of them were because Gay was right there, and Eckler is just a tough tackle. I mean, he's such a good player in the open field. And so with Gay out, they just don't have a sideline to sideline guy who can keep up with running backs. Nick Bolton is a good player, but he's a specific player. He's not a sprint down the sideline kind of guy.
So you've got a prop, Mike, on this one.
Let me pull my prop up here. And this is from DraftKings. And as you might imagine, there's going to be a lot of bet on mayhem bets in this game. So here's one. Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, 600 passing yards and 7+ passing touchdowns combined at plus 450. So again, that's 600+ passing yards, 7+ passing touchdowns combined. Well within range for these two individuals.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the Scrooge on this one with my go under 54 idea. Obviously, it will be more fun if it does not go under 54.
Yeah.
Right.
The 7, if it were 7 touchdowns, I'd say go for that because I think one of them or both of them will run for a touchdown. Right. I'm sure that's why they didn't offer it because it makes it a much easier bet. Mm-hmm. The 600 yards, I think they surpass unless the Bills pass rush dominates the Chiefs O-line. I think they both surpass it. And honestly, even if they do, Mahomes is Mahomes. Unless his guys are dropping the ball, he's still probably going to put up 300+ yards in any form of shootout. It just doesn't matter as long as guys are catching the ball.
And these teams don't feel the need to run. Andy Reid, despite having a strong pass run ratio, always kind of feels the need to throw a few runs in there, but for the most part, this is going to be a pass day.
Absolutely. We've seen a few changes from Reid this year in spurts where they'll run the ball a little more. Against Tampa Bay, they had some mean intentions, and they actually against the Raiders, one way they started getting it going again was a few nice runs. Yeah. It's what their offensive line is better at. The interior is great at both. The tackles are better at run blocking. But that's just not Andy Reid. And the Bills defense isn't really one to test that out against. They're an excellent run defense. They control the line of scrimmage well. But that's just never going to be who Andy Reid is. It's just not. They could have prime Jamal Charles back there with Tony Richardson blocking for him, and they still wouldn't line up like that. That's just not how he does it.
Yeah. Is Trey Smith healthy? Because you just talked about the interior offensive line, right? He missed last week, I think.
He practiced in full yesterday. I haven't seen anything from today. Wednesday is big for Reid, and then Friday, like any other team. But I mean, so he was a full participant in yesterday's practice. He's a tough guy. They're planning on him playing at this point. It's tough with the pectoral stuff because you want to make sure, okay, is this something that could get worse? Because the Chiefs Super Bowl isn't this week. They got pounded by the Bills last year in the regular season, and down the stretch, it didn't matter that much. And they should have a good understanding of that. And in some ways, that's where the Chiefs are playing with a little more house money than the Bills because they know they can bounce back from that. Whereas the Chiefs have ended the Bills season a few times now. They're a little more the boogeyman for them. So I don't think they'll play him unless they're sure. But as of right now, he's set to play, and that makes a difference.
I'm trying to remember. I'm forgetting. The game last year was in Kansas City or in Buffalo, the playoff game?
Yep. They were both in Kansas City.
So Buffalo is probably thinking, we need to win this one. We need to get the home field advantage. We need to have Kansas City come to our building in January.
I think so, especially after what they witnessed last on Monday Night Football. I would not want to play an Arrowhead after seeing them bully Sheffers like that.
That was amazing.
I've never seen it. I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, Buffalo has extra reason, besides just weather and home cooking, to want this game to be in Buffalo in January.
Yeah. The last thing you want is the NFL to send Sheffers there again and B, I hope they don't. I don't like the way he referees Chiefs games, but I mean, I have never seen anything like that before. A ref's voice shaking when he's just, guys, there's not a penalty here. We're good. Let's all stay calm.
Yeah, the Raiders ended up with 13 penalties in that game to 5 for the Chiefs.
That sounds about right to me. I mean, based on what I saw, it sounds like a well officiated game. I
mean, the Chiefs one meant more because 2 of them were pass interference, and one of them was that, I mean, not ridiculous roughing the passer. That roughing the passer that made sense by the rule, which is a ridiculous rule, roughing the passer.
Right. When it was such a game swinging moment, that it really was like, you knew the refs were probably going to give them some makeup calls, and they did. Then some of the calls some of the calls they made were pretty correct. I've got a lot of Raiders fans, not as many now, a couple days later in the week, that were in my mentions talking about that defensive holding on the field goal, which I mean looked like a great call to me, honestly. But I just keep showing them, look, Chris Jones got blatantly held on the Raiders' final drive in what would have been a drive-killing sack. And so just relax, everyone calm down. It was just a very poorly officiated game, but that second half swung things in the Chiefs' favor. And I actually have a running theory that all those things we can't quantify, and we can't, over multiple games in terms of like momentum and attitude and all this stuff that maybe it matters, maybe it doesn't. I think that might have been one game where it did a little because the Chiefs were like sleepwalking, and the value of angry energy seemed to it at least did something there. It was one of the most bizarre games I've ever seen. So of course it was against the Raiders.
One more question for you from Bill Houston. Prognosis on Lucas Niang coming back and replacing Wiley as the swing tackle. Wiley's playing right tackle now. Is he starting at right tackle?
Yep. He's been starting there all season. I think he was on track. Well, so Niang is still recovering from an injury from last year. Niang has struggled with injuries consistently. And unfortunately for him, when he's been on the field, while he shows the traits that got him drafted high, he moves very well for a guy his size. His bounce, though, has been problematic, and he just fights lingering injury after lingering injury. I think even if Niang got healthy, I know the Chiefs like Wiley. They recognize he is what he is. He's an average offensive lineman, which means you're going to have ups and downs. But when you say the term average offensive lineman, that might sound like an insult, but it's not. It's a compliment. There are very few teams in the NFL that have an average offensive lineman at every spot.
Right.
And so I don't think that he'll replace him. And honestly, I haven't heard anything about Niang, any indication that he is going to be healthy enough to come back anytime soon.
All right. So, the Bills are favored now by 2.5. I'm going to guess you would pick the Chiefs, but how confident are you in this one?
I would pick the Chiefs, not confidently. We've seen the Bills boat race them before in the regular season. Not that really has that much of an impact, but in terms of confidence, it does. I think the matchup there, that pass rush against the Chiefs offensive line as it's playing right now, especially the tackles, I think Orlando Brown is still a little bit nicked up. He's had a knee issue. And when you already don't have a lot of mobility to spare, that's problematic. I think that's a really tough matchup. And that's the reason they got Von Miller. Like they might as well have stamped, "This is for Patrick Mahomes" on his forehead when they signed him. Like they saw what happened last year and they said, okay, it's not enough for us to score a zillion points. It's not enough for us to play really well defensively. We need to be able to constantly harass him. So please go give Von Miller whatever he wants. Good move. And I'm curious what that looks like. I'm actually going to be there at the game live. So I'm hoping it looks like nothing they're hoping it looks like.
Can I just say, by the way, I keep thinking that this game is tonight's game.
God, wouldn't that be awesome?
And as soon as I remember it's not, I get really disappointed and sad. So I've been having a little journey here on a rainy day in Philadelphia. I was like, I get Bills Chiefs no, I get the Wentz.
Well, I'm sure the game that's scheduled for tonight will be. Never mind.
Anyway, everything you say is true. I'm taking Bills with a degree of confidence if it's only laying 2.5. And you're right, Aaron, that over at 54.5, that's too rich for my blood. I'm probably just going to skip it, although I don't know if I'd lean under, just going to avoid it.
Yeah, I would take the Bills with this line, but not with confidence. I would not want to bet. I feel like it's really close to a toss up. The Bills are favored slightly, maybe, but I wouldn't want to have a lot of money riding on it because it could go a lot of ways.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's just going to depend on a few very specific matchups, I think, how the entire tenor of the game goes. And so I'm excited for it, though. It'll be fun to watch, if nothing else.
Well, it'll be fun to go to.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
apparently it's supposed to be like 65 and sunny.
perfect
real nice in Buffalo.
It snowed here this morning a little bit, so I'm excited. I'm gonna eat my weight in barbecue and hopefully still have enough energy to yell.
Awesome, man. All right, Seth Keysor, thank you for joining us from the Athletic Kansas City, and he's also just an amazing follow. If you are interested in the Chiefs, or the Chiefs are one of the top teams in the league, so you should be interested in the Chiefs. At RealMN Chiefs Fan on Twitter. Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's get back to the rest of the games. First of all, Chris Bork has a fantasy question about starting Brian Robinson against the Bears and whether he should start him over Terry McLaurin or James Robinson. Now, I don't know the answer to that. But first of all, I'm going to suggest the fantasy projections at FO Plus to tell you what our projection is. And second, I think I'm not ready to start Brian Robinson until I see him carry the full load. And he had a lot of carries last week, but he didn't have a lot of snaps. I'd want to see him have more snaps in a game before I'm ready to play him, even though, as we're about to discuss, the Indianapolis run defense is actually pretty good this year, so Robinson may not be the best play.
Right, and they're
James
rotating.
Robinson may not be the best play.
They're rotating those guys and trying to get ETN more involved. Robinson's getting a lot of the short yardage stuff. That is true.
Yeah.
How often will the Commanders get to the goal line? I don't know. We all see that Carson Wentz is now on the injury report with a whatever. So that means McLaurin might not be the best play, and they have not connected very well. So I don't have a good answer for you, Chris. I would suggest looking to our
I think I would still go James Robinson because I feel like the touchdown chances are higher, but see what our projections say, and then you'll figure it out. So back to Jacksonville at Indianapolis, which we were discussing before Seth appeared.
Yes.
Which is a surprisingly important game.
Yes.
So I had said when I went and looked at what would things look like if we took out that 24-0 Jaguars win. The Colts would still be the worst offense in the league.
Wow, really? Without the shutout?
Both of their units would be better, and overall they would improve to 29th in DVOA instead of 32nd. But even if you take out the 24-0, they're the worst offense in the league, and they're 29th overall. And the Jaguars would drop, and instead of being 7th, the Jaguars would be an average team. But the Jaguars would still, in their other 4 games, the Jaguars have very much outplayed the Colts in the Colts' other 4 games.
The Colts are 0-2-1 right now in division.
Yeah.
0-3-1 with a sweep at the Jaguars. That is kind of like sayonara time for the division. Sayonara time for the division probably means sayonara for a playoff berth in the AFC South along the way. I don't want to think too hard about how a team can lose a shutout that represents 25% of their play and still, their offense doesn't get better enough to reach 31st in the league. That's terrifying.
Yeah, that is. They have been the worst offense, both running and passing. And a big part is the offensive line is really declined this year. I went and looked at the ESPN win rates. Mm-hmm. Jacksonville is number 2 right now in pass rush win rate.
Okay.
Indianapolis is 31st in pass block win rate.
35th, I get it. And not only are they losing one-on-one, they're getting blitzed a lot. So I pulled this up earlier from Sports Info Solutions. Matt Ryan has been blitzed 60 times. That's 5+ pass rushers. Okay. Josh Allen is the only quarterback who's been blitzed more. I don't understand that logic. Let's just
let's weird. Okay.
Off that to the side. So Matt Ryan is blitzed as much as pretty much any quarterback in the NFL. He's been sacked 10 times from the blitz. That's the league high in sacks from blitzes. 2 interceptions. I have no idea how many fumbles And he's
Lots.
only averaging 6.2 yards per attempt. So he's not making anyone pay by any stretch of the imagination. They're blitzing with impunity against the Colts, and the Colts can't block, and Ryan can't escape.
All right. The more I'm looking at numbers, I'll say the more I'm telling Chris Bork actually he should start Brian Robinson over James Robinson. The Jaguars only had 2.6 yards per carry in the first game between these two teams. Even though they won 24-0, they still only averaged 2.6 yards per carry.
Okay.
Bill Houston wants to know if there's going to be a squash the beef segment with you and Derek Klassen regarding whether Matt Ryan is toast, because it seems the results are in. I do think we have to wait for a little later into the season in case Ryan bounces back a little bit, but
Yeah.
Mike is winning that one right now.
Yeah, we're still waiting on like Maricopa County or whatever, but like most of the results are in. Maybe too early to call for CNN and MSNBC, but it's looking kind of like I got the win here. But remember, Derek and I have a wager, and the wager is not whether or not Ryan is toast, because I believe Ryan can still bounce back to some degree if the blocking improves, et cetera, et cetera. The wager is who will have the better record, the Colts or the Steelers. Now, I'm not feeling great about about that particular.
Yeah, the Colts have sort of snuck a couple of wins here, even though they suck, and the Steelers have not.
They have not, and the Steelers have the Buccaneers this week, and we'll talk about that a tiny bit a little bit later. But it only goes to show you it's not just about who's toast and who's not toast. It's sort of like the entire team along the way. And the reason why I advocated for the Colts to take Trubisky, not Matt Ryan, is because Trubisky was cheap and disposable. And they probably would have doubled down and grabbed, well, they couldn't have grabbed Pickett, but they could have grabbed Ritter or Willis, and they could be looking at their rebuild right now instead of what they're looking at right now.
So it's Colts -1.5 with a total of 42.
What's our simulation say about over under on that? I'm guessing it leans
slightly over.
Oh, I hate
very
this.
Slightly. Like, don't bet it.
Don't bet it. Don't bet it. Like, and there's so many AFC South games right now. I'm so sick of AFC South games already. I'm glad.
Well, I really feel strongly about Jaguars +1.5.
I'm going to go the other way. I feel like the Colts only have to get their act together a little bit to kind of reassert themselves. The Jaguars have been fading over the last couple of weeks.
That's true. That's true.
A little bit of the helium's coming out of that. So, as much as I'm a skeptic about the Colts, I'd lean the Colts this time.
All right, another big 1:00 game, surprisingly important. New England at Cleveland. This is the game that's going to be all running.
Yes.
The Browns are number 1 in run DVOA. The Patriots are only 11th, but they're 3rd in adjusted line yards because they get steady gains, not long ones.
Mm-hmm.
The Patriots' run defense is 28th. Mm-hmm. The Browns' run defense is 32nd.
It's good.
Run, don't walk to play all your Browns and Patriots running backs.
Yes, whoever's healthy, because it's Ramondre Stevenson and
it's going to be Ramondre Stevenson and Pierre Strong. Probably.
Pierre Strong, a lot of Ramondre there. But yeah, the Browns' run defense allows 5.0 yards per rush on first down, but their run defense allows 6.0 yards on second down, and then they allow 5.1 yards on third down. So if you run twice, you're probably going to get 10 yards on the first down against the Browns.
And here's a weird split. The Patriots are 19th in DVOA running on first down.
Okay.
But they're first on second down. So what you just said about the Browns giving up more yards per carry on second down, like, I don't know what it is about second down. It has to do with how many yards there are to go and the sort of what are the pass and run options. But the Patriots are really good at running on second down so far this year.
And that's usually a sign of being ahead of schedule. Okay, you're staying ahead of schedule. I think they have been, especially with the Zappy era. They've been mixing enough runs, short passes that Zappy can execute. So they were ahead of the sticks really consistently, I think, against the Lions. And on the Browns side of that, it's like, well, I think the Browns defense is predicated on, oh, good, it's 3rd and 10. Now we can unleash Garrett now that he's healthy again, unleash Clowney, who I think is healthy again. But you can't get to that because when it's neutral and the full playbook is open, you're not playing good defense.
Yeah. The other question is, when the Browns do decide to pass, will Patriots get any pass rush on them at all? They're 30th in pass rush win rate, and Cleveland's offensive line is number 1 pass blocking.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess I'm just watching Judon single-handedly then.
Yes, Judon has sacks, but they're not bringing a lot of pressure otherwise. They did on Goff. They didn't in the first 4 games. They definitely brought more pressure last week than they did the first 4 games. Like, Goff was you know the way Goff is. If you get him off schedule, it's like easy pick.
He was going completely off kilter later in that game after a couple of hits. That was clear. And I believe there's a Denzel Ward injury for the Cleveland Browns. And check on that so I'm not just completely like off my rocker right now that I saw Denzel Ward on the injury report. I will check simultaneously.
He's in concussion protocol.
He is in concussion protocol. So that's a very good chance they're without him. Now, on the one hand, you're like, oh, well, it's Nelson Aguilar. It's not Nelson Aguilar. It's probably Devontae Parker. And a lot of mileage got gotten by Zappe out of just the heave-ho to Parker, who I think there were a couple of big flags on those plays where he got a couple of pass interferences. I think they were both against Devontae Parker.
Parker is definitely the receiver that the opponents treat as the one.
Yes,
like they had Okudah when Okudah was still healthy early in the game. Like Okudah was covering Parker completely. Right,
because he's got the talent, he's got the skill set of a one, so you have to treat him like a one, despite years of inconsistency. And that's what they're going to do. Zappe's just going to launch it up the left sideline now and then. You want to make sure that there's somebody there who can cover Parker and won't get a flag for it.
So the line is Browns -2.5 with a total of 43.
I like the Zap Brannigan experience. I mean, not long term, obviously, but I'd almost, because of the terrible Browns run defense, because of the ability, seeing Jack Jones make play after play right now, see how good Dugar's playing for the Patriots against the Brissett experience. I'm leaning Patriots in this, and I would probably head in the direction of a +120 money line to take them straight up. So I'm just looking necessarily at a straight.
Yeah, 2.5 is a kind of like the money line makes more sense than the same goes with the Jaguars Colts game, by the way.
Although there's almost nothing on the money line either. So I'm leaning Patriots.
Yeah, the FO picks have the Browns a little bit. I'm trying not to lean Patriots just because I'm a Patriots fan, and these are the games that they can win.
Yeah,
like before the schedule gets really tough later.
And that's kind of it. These are the games they win. Now I know it's not the same coaching staff, or if it was McDaniel's coaching, I'd be like, oh, they're going to just come up with some game plan and just steamroll them. But even with these guys, this is the game that the Patriots tend to win.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Baltimore and the New York Giants. Baltimore is 3rd in DVOA, and the Giants, despite being 4-1, are 18th. That's not including the preseason projection, where I was wrong. They're not the worst team in the league.
So many of us were wrong.
Even if you only look at what they've done in 5 games this season, they're only 18th. Right. They are the worst defense in the league on first down. The Ravens have the number 2 offense in the league on first down. The one thing that's bad is that Baltimore has not been good against the run this year.
Right.
And the Giants, of course, have been good. Barkley has a low success rate, but he's got lots of those big, long runs. And Daniel Jones has a lot of value on the ground.
Yes. Yeah. And one thing the Giants have done a very good job of during this run is staying in every game. Because when your main thing is that you can run the ball, and kind of like with Barkley, it's a lot of running between the tackles, you better stay in the game. You better not go down by 2 scores. I don't know if they've got it in them this particular time, because it's just what you described. That they should be facing an offense that should be able to take a commanding lead. Just
the Ravens thing has been taking commanding leads and then blowing them.
Right. But
so
I don't see
what happens if they take a commanding lead and take the run away from the Giants? Will the Giants come back on that?
Yeah, I don't see Jalen Waddle. I don't see Tyreek Hill. I don't see, Stephon Diggs. I don't see the guys who can do that if there's a comeback situation. By the way, I was chatting with somebody on Twitter. You ran that list of worst 4-1 teams.
Yes, I saw that. I was out to dinner and did not get to participate in the conversation.
Right, and somebody was pointing out, well, a lot of these bad 4-1 teams make the playoffs.
Well, because they started 4-1.
Yeah, because they started 4-1. I think our odds right now are at 43% for the Giants to make the playoffs entering this game without even looking at it. But it's like, yes, that's it. If they go 5-6 the rest of the way, or 6-6 the rest of the way now, they're a winning team and they're probably a playoff team. And that's kind of what DVOA is pointing out.
Yeah. A couple of those teams on that list did dramatically improve.
Yes.
Like the 98 Falcons started slow, stumbled into some close wins, and then turned on the afterburners and were really good over the second half of the season and made it to the Super Bowl.
And that would be the one team you would look at, because Chris Chandler was their quarterback and they were relying on Jamal Anderson. That would be like your dream scenario for the Giants.
Yeah.
But it happened once.
Ravens -6 and
Oh.
45.
I would probably sit on the Ravens there.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
That's-
Ravens. I like the Ravens -6. I don't think I'd play the total, but I like the Ravens -6.
No, this looks like a course correction game.
Yeah. Dallas at Philadelphia. Almost as big for Super Bowl odds as Buffalo and Kansas City.
Woo!
Dallas makes the Super Bowl in 16% of our sims if they win, 8% if they lose. Philadelphia, 40% if they win, 28% if they lose. That is the power still of Philadelphia being better in our projections,
Yes.
better this season, and the easier schedule.
You just got a win and a win to give in the division where they're the undefeated team.
Right.
And Derek just did a great thing on the Cowboys pass rush. And it all begins and ends kind of like with the Cowboys pass rush. What's going to be the chess match there? Will the Eagles try to block this straight up, or is it going to be a lot of screen draw option game to try and neutralize the fact that they should be able to get some rush on?
The thing is,
yeah,
both of these defenses are good rushing the passer.
yes,
The Eagles' offensive line has been much better this season than the Dallas offensive line.
that's true. But the Cowboys pass rush is is it different with win rate? Because in like most stats, the Cowboys.
No, the Cowboys and Eagles are both in the top 6 for both pass rush win rate and pressure rate.
Mm-hmm.
But the Eagles are 7th in pass block win rate, and the Cowboys are dead last.
And that's the thing. And the Cowboys have gotten a lot of mileage out of playing with a lead consistently.
Yes.
Okay, they play for a lead most of the time against the Rams. They were in the lead I think predominantly against the Bengals in most of those victories. Eagles have been playing with the lead a lot too, but when you're trying to protect your backup quarterback and you're trying to hide the fact that you aren't blocking particularly well, the idea that you can go 3 and out because you've got some win probability to spare is a big deal for you.
I will say that the Eagles are really superb against wide receivers so far this year. They are number 1 against wide receiver 1 and number 2 against wide receiver 2.
Wow. Slay and Bradbury.
Slay and Bradbury are a good combination.
Right.
I went and looked about running quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas has been poor against running quarterbacks this year, but that's almost all Daniel Jones in week 3. It's almost all scrambles. So I don't know if that tells you anything about Jalen Hurts. And last year they only played Jalen Hurts once because that week 18 game they played Minshew because the game didn't have Eagles.
That's right.
Other thing I'll point out is that the Cowboys do have a large special teams advantage in this game based on how these teams have played so far.
Interesting. I haven't perceived the Cowboys as having outstanding special teams. The Eagles have been
they're actually 5th in special teams this year.
Excellent. The Eagles had some trouble at the return game. Yeah. They seem to have replaced Jalen Reagor with other Reagor, and of course they've been dickering with a variety of different kickers.
Right, so they had the backup kicker. A lot of teams have. It's like a really weird year for. There's been a lot of kicker injuries.
It's been a great year to be Matt Amendola because you can just go from town to town with a bindle sack on your back and go and miss a couple field goals for a team and then go to get your next job. But the young man Cameron Dicker, obviously the game winner last week. I don't know what the situation is right now, kicker. So
I feel a little bit like the way you feel about Baltimore and the Giants. I feel a little bit like this may be the game where the Cooper Rush thing gets exposed. That it's all short stuff and playing with a lead. Not all. He's made some good passes to Noah Brown and stuff, but that this is where it's a more competitive game. The pass rush, the Eagles have a heavy pass rush. They have good cornerbacks.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to end up dumping it off to running backs a lot for small gains. I feel like this may be it turns out we do need Dak Prescott back.
And I think they were getting there in the Rams game. Because Rush was not playing particularly well. Then they get a 60-yard run, and then Stafford starts making mistakes because of the pass rush. So if the Eagles are balanced, which they've proven they can be with a running game, if they're working their screen game, which they worked way too much of their screen game against the Cardinals, frankly, but that's one of the things you can do against them. And they start getting a little bit, so it's 10-0, 10-3, 13-3 Eagles. Rush has got to throw. We're going to see the reality. We saw the reality of Geno Smith, and oh my God, he's still doing well. But I don't think
the Geno Smith thing is that's a completely different subject. But it's
right
because Geno Smith I wrote about this for ESPN for tomorrow. Everything you think about Cooper Rush is not true of Geno Smith.
Yes.
He is not throwing a lot of short stuff.
Right.
He's not throwing screens.
Right.
He's just as good when they don't use play action, and he's not playing from ahead a lot.
Right. He's not playing from ahead a
So
lot.
all your usual backup quarterback crutches, Geno
Exactly.
Smith is not using them.
That's it. And he is getting pressured a reasonable amount, and he's moving around and making plays under pressure. And because I was like watching the last week's game, like, this is going to see it. And just these teardrops into the end zone. I'm like, what am I
Who
watching?
is this person? Like, it's crazy. So, I mean, I know Cooper Rush, ESPN's QBR has him really high, and DVOA has him pretty good, but I don't feel, put it this way, I wouldn't say I'm confident that Geno Smith is for real.
Right.
But I will say I am much less skeptical about Geno Smith at this point, especially after last week and some of those deep throws, than I am about Cooper Rush and what Cooper Rush is going to do in this game. So the line is Eagles -6, and I like Eagles -6 in this game.
I'm not touching it. Too much bet with my heart, bet with my head. If this was a neutral game, I don't know if I'd touch it if it was a neutral game, because the Cowboys, that front four can be an equalizer, can lure you into a close game. You mentioned the special team situation. So if you're trying to cover a spread and you get a missed field goal, missed extra point in there, would lean the Eagles for the win, though.
All right, let's briefly hit on Monday because we're almost at an hour.
Yes.
But Denver at the Chargers is, in fact, the most important game of the week for playoff odds.
Okay.
Denver 46% with a win, 19% with a loss. Chargers 80% with a win, 53% with a loss. Well, interesting. The Chargers defense is really good against wide receiver ones, but weak against everyone else.
Okay.
Wide receiver two. Sorry, it should be wide receiver two that they're first against.
That's almost like residual thing.
Yeah, it's sort of weird, right? And the other I'm looking forward to is Patrick Surtain versus Mike Williams. And I'm looking forward to it as a football fan, not as a Mike Williams fantasy owner, but as a football fan, I'm definitely looking forward to it. Also, the Broncos strong pass rush, although Gregory's on IR.
Yeah.
Against the Chargers, where this guy, they've got the 6th round rookie named Jamari Salyer.
Salyer.
Who's playing really well in place of Rashawn Slater. Surprise! Like,
I interviewed the kid at the combine. He was my combine. You have to interview a guy so that you get access to the interview thing. And then the link never worked. I didn't get access to the other interviews. But I did the interview with Salyer. Nice kid. Went back and watched his film afterwards because it's like, well, I just interviewed the kid. And it's like, oh, yeah, he's going to be a pretty good guard in the NFL.
Yeah.
He's a left tackle.
He's playing left tackle, and he's playing very well.
Right. I have no sense of who the Chargers are at this point. It looks like their run defense has turned back into a pumpkin recently. Their offense, and I understand why it's so dink and dunk oriented. People are like, oh, why haven't you like unleashed Justin Herbert? To whom? Okay, Williams is going to be your boundary guy.
Guyton's injured.
Guyton's hurt, right? So it's like
maybe that's because we've been talking about the whole Panthers. Should the Panthers have a fire sale? Maybe that's where Robbie Anderson should go.
That'd be fun.
Robbie Anderson to stretch the field for the Chargers.
Just put him in the slot, run vertical. If Allen gets back healthy at any point, you got the underneath, and then Williams is going to get more single coverage, 50-50 opportunities, can play the comeback game. But yeah, it's hard to get any sense of that team. Hard to get any sense of the Broncos right now because we're trapped in that offense. And
that red zone offense, in case you didn't see Brian Knoll's article today, if the season ended now, they would have the 2nd worst red zone offense ever.
Who's first?
The Phoenix Cardinals of, I think, 1993.
That sounds Buddy Ryan-esque. Or maybe it's Bugle-esque. I've got to go read it.
The worst red zone offenses is a lot of Phoenix Cardinals teams and a lot of St. Louis Rams from 2009, 2010.
The Spags.
So like when it was like Austin Davis and stuff.
You got to read Brian Knowles' column. Check it out. I'm going to be checking it out soon.
But the Chargers are also bad in the red zone. They're 25th in red zone offense.
My goodness.
So expect some field goals in this game.
That's it. That would be my prop, the over-under on field goals.
Chargers -4.5.
Sure. I'll take the Chargers -4.5 in that game. It's actually down to 5, -5 for the Chargers. I'm guessing we're looking at under for 45.
Over 45.5.
I'm not touching that, but I'll go with the Chargers -5.
Yeah, the over/under formula has a lot of counterintuitive results, but it's had really good results this year. So
You have to think counterintuitively for over/unders because of the interaction of offense and defense in these games.
Yeah, and pace.
And pace,
It
yes.
incorporates both offense and defense, but it also incorporates pace for both teams and then weather. And also, here's an interesting, even though it's going over in this game, division games on average have about 1.8 fewer points than other games.
Familiarity.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's pretty wild.
It is actually a thing. It comes out as statistically significant.
Neat. Very cool.
So, this has been inside the new over/under formula, now available on FO Plus. Over/under picks for every game.
Absolutely.
Let's quickly do your lock of the week.
Okay. Well, speaking of our FO picks, I wanted to highlight some of the things that are available there. And you're right. There are over/under picks right now. There are spread picks, and there are also just straight up picks. And in the past, the straight up picks are like, oh, congratulations. Thank you for telling me the Bills can beat the Steelers. That doesn't really help for gambling purposes. But I want to unlock the power of parlays. Okay. So we have a couple of things in there that look like parlays. One of them is the Panthers against who are the Panthers facing this week? The Rams?
I think it's the Rams, yeah.
Rams. I'm not touching that because I'm worried about a bounce when a team fires their head coach. Here's another one that looks great. The Buccaneers, straight up pick. That should be pretty easy against the Steelers. But I'm taking the Buccaneers money line and the over. Okay, our system likes the over. I think we were down 43.5 when I took it. And I'm getting plus 125 on that bet. So
it didn't happen against Buffalo. But I believe in the rookie quarterback backdoor cover.
Yes. That was messy last week.
Yeah, I do believe, and I think that's where the over will come from. That the over will come from some Kenny Pickett fun in the fourth quarter when it doesn't matter anymore.
When it doesn't matter, exactly right. And there's less just sort of weird penalties and things like that at the end of the game. And that's where we get both the over and the backdoor cover in that game.
So you hear it here first. $4 quadrillion pick of the lock of the week.
I'm even for the year. If you're wondering, because I'm dead even for the year again. Last week's crazy 2-dog tease, I was overthinking it a little bit. This is simple. Same game parlay, money line over, Buccaneers go.
All right. That does it for the show. Our Week 6 preview with Mike Tanier. Hello. Thank you for joining, as always, everybody who's watching and listening on the Football Outsiders Podcast Network. Again, a reminder, we are here at 1 o'clock Eastern every day. I believe the Friday show is returning tomorrow with Cale Clinton and Brian Knowles. 1 o'clock Eastern every day. Please come talk football with us every day. Please listen to the podcast and tell your friends about the podcast. Spread the word about the Football Outsiders Podcast Network. That does it for today. Mike will be back Monday. I will be back Tuesday. Everybody enjoy Week 6. Even Chicago, Washington. Even enjoy that one.
Wentz slander. Nothing but Wentz slander on the Discord tonight.
And we'll see you next week.